it's Miss Sebastian again. I'm so excited to do a new art project with you. Today we are continuing our pop art legacy and we are learning about the incredible artist Roy Lichtenstein. So I hope you enjoy learning about him, his art, and making the project with me today. Today we're going to be learning about Roy Lichtenstein. He is one of those godfathers of the pop art movement, just like Andy Warhol was. He got very popular in the 60s and he carried out his career through the 90s. He was born in 1923 and died in 1997. I was only a teacher at Holly Navarre Intermediate School for a few years when he died, and I remember where I was when I found out, and believe it or not, I had a good cry. I was also alive when Andy Warhol died, and I remembered how the news was just inundated with full biographies of him and his life as well. And I remember being much younger, but also affected by it as well. Just a little interesting side note for you. Roy Lichtenstein died when he was 74 years old, and he died of pneumonia. He was born in New York, and he studied at the Art Students League and then Ohio State University. He went on to teach at New York State and Rutgers universities. In 1949, Lichtenstein began to exhibit some of his early works, and he started off as a Cubist artist. Actually, it was his son that convinced him to get into pop art, and we are certainly thankful that he did. After meeting Alan Capro at Rutgers, he became interested in consumerism and American culture, and that also spurred him on into the pop art movement. So, what is his claim to fame? Well, he looked at the way that newspapers were printing things cheaply, in particular the comic pages. So when I grew up, every Sunday there would be a huge pull-out section of just comic strips. And in order to print them cheaply using color, they would do a Ben-Day dot series. So these are regularly spaced dots that are used to show color and texture. And a lot of pop artists use them, but Roy Lichtenstein was the first and, in my opinion, the best. Here's one of his comic book panels. So here he's taking a popular everyday thing, such as comic books or comic strips, and he is making them into fine art. So we have, in the 1960s, this panel that says, "Vicky, I thought I heard your voice." But he has really kind of added his own style to it. He probably did the bubble words, changed them up and put his own thing in there. Or maybe he really accentuated the black outlining of the original panel and really made it his own, which is what it's all about. And this was enamel on steel, so it's not on paper. He actually printed it on a hard steel surface. This is one of his most famous ones as well. It uses onomatopoeias in it. You might know that from your studies in English language arts. That's where we take words that sound like the sounds they're trying to emulate. So pop when you blow that bubble when you're chewing bubble gum. Bam when a pot hits the countertop. In this case, we have some jet fighters that are having explosions, so we see the big word wham in it. Also, there's that whole thing about taking other people's artwork and claiming it as your own. Again, changing it up, making it unique. And, this is the Cathedral de Rouen in France. And the one on this side is actually an original painting by Monet. And he has a whole series of these paintings about how the light affects the front of this cathedral. And so what Lichtenstein did is he took it and put the Ben-Day dots on it. Today we're going to be making a self-portrait style comic book panel in the style of Roy Lichtenstein. We're going to be having you say something. To do this, you'll need a helper because you're going to lay your face on the side of the paper and use a crayon or a dull pencil to trace the outline of it. You'll need a family member to help you with that. All right, I'm now going to go through and I am going to use a marker to make all of those lines that I just traced around her face. Like so. And if you want to do this next part with a pencil before doing it with marker, you're welcome to. But I happen to know that probably somewhere in here should be her eyes. And this is the profile view that we're doing. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, comic books are not always going to be exactly realistic. So you can definitely change up a little bit if you need to make it look like the way you wanted it to look. Somewhere between the eyebrow and the mouth should be an ear. I do a question mark, give you that representation of all the lines. And then here comes the hair. And remember, it can be completely stylized because this is supposed to be a comic book or cartoon style. And then I'm going to make her say something. So I'm going to put that big caption box in here that has her saying something. Hey Lily, what would you like your person's bubble to be saying?
I love my mom.
Oh my gosh, I just love my family so much. All right, so she wants to say that. So I love my mom. And she wasn't paid to say that, by the way. I just thought I'd throw that in there. And then we can put other things in the picture. We can put a realistic background, or we can just put other things. Maybe I will put some emojis. I know she likes those. And I could leave it at that. Okay, so for the next part, we have some options. So I'm gonna show you a couple of those. All right, so for one of the ways to get texture into your picture is you can make your own textures. All I have here is a piece of paper and some glue. And if I wanna do that Ben-Day dot, oh, it would be nice if my glue bottle worked. So if it's not working, close it up all the way, scrape off some of that dried glue up at the very top, open it back up again, and voila. So I'm gonna make my own Ben-Day dot texture. So all I'm doing here is I'm just putting quick little dots with glue, and then I'm gonna let those dry. But are you limited to just doing dots? No, you can absolutely do more. So if you don't want to do just dots, maybe you want to do a pattern. So, you know, maybe I'm going to do a striped pattern on here. Make sure that glue is nice and thick. Maybe it'll be checkerboard in some areas. Maybe it'll just be stripes close together. And then you could let this dry, and you've got your instant textures that we're going to be doing for the next part, which is applying color. with texture, and that is going to be called a rubbing. So with that, I am going to let it dry and move on to our next step. I'm going to slip this under, and I am going to hold it in place. And when I use the crayon, you can see that a lot of those little bumps are showing up to kind of give me that sort of bendy kind of a look. I'm going to have to keep moving it around though, because I only did a small section with the dots. I'm going to bring this down. So now I've got this bumpy texture underneath, and I'm going to use another texture, and it can be things that you find around the home. You can put it up against the wall. If your mamas get too nervous seeing you with crayon and paper coloring on the wall like that, please follow their desires. If you have wood grain on doors, if you've got texture on tiles, you could flip over a shoe and try using the bottom of a shoe. I have this bamboo mat, so I'm going to just put it underneath for the hair and find the appropriate crayon. She has light golden brown hair. Like so. After scrounging around the house, I found a paper plate. I ate an orange, and I found this cool little art plate. So all these can create interesting textures. So I'm gonna go underneath this little smiley face here, put that orange peel underneath it, and I am going to color over it. That one has a very subtle texture. Not going to do the word bubble. I think that's very important not to, because they usually didn't do that. And sometimes changing the color is just good enough. I am going to use my paper plate. And I'm going to do this one. And I'm going to use one of my stripes, I think, for my last one. All right, and there is my finished pop art Roy Lichtenstein artwork. Hope you enjoy it. Oh, did you enjoy making that as much as I enjoyed teaching it? I hope so. Stay tuned for our interesting pop art fact of the day at the end of this video. But remember to always be kind, love one another, do something nice for someone today, and keep on making great art. All right, for today's interesting fact of the day, brought to us by Ripley's BelieveItOrNot.com, it is Beyonce. Her film career has given her plenty of different looks, but this one is made completely of candy. It is a 40-inch by 32-inch portrait, and it's actually in the lobby of the Ripley's Believe It or Not Auditorium in Orlando.